Good morning, everyone, dear colleagues, dear speakers, dear participants. So today is a very special day because we are holding our 9th conference, International Conference for Young Researchers, The World of Science Without Borders. My name is Natalia Gunina, and I will be walking you through this conference, presenting our speakers and giving some information about the conference and how important it is for our university and how important your participation is for us. But before we give the floor to our first speaker, I would like to invite the Vice Rector for International Relations, Елена Sergeyevna Mishchenko, to say a few words to welcome the participants.
Hello, dear friends. It's a pleasure for me, I think the 9th year already, to be present on such a great conference. And the name of the conference is really a speaking out name. I always say among my colleagues all over the world that education and science has no borders at all. We are working for the future of our generations. We are working for the future of our planet. And it's important that our university, Tambov State Technical University, is really on the stage of international cooperation, is on the stage of cooperation activities with our colleagues. We are working a lot on the international conferences. We are working a lot on co-researches with our colleagues. And we also worry a lot about learning, about education. We have different programs of academic mobilities, and I think that it is very important that we have such conferences where we can present our research activities, where we can deliver our thoughts, where we can create something new. And I do really wish you a creative work. I do wish you a very important time for you to think about new ways of your research activities. And of course, I hope to see you soon during our next scientific events. I wish you good luck. Of course, I wish you health. I hope to see all our colleagues without masks soon. And of course, all our online colleagues who are with us nowadays, to meet here in the friendly atmosphere of Tambov State Technical University. Good luck.
Thank you, Elena Sergeyevna. So, as Elena Sergeyevna said, this year is the 9th conference, and this is really important for us because it started almost 10 years ago as a small in-house gathering, and now it grew into a truly international event because we received quite a lot of proposals to be published in the volume of conference proceedings. More than 160 to be exact, and we have participants not only from Russia and from our university, we also have participants from abroad, and we have a guest speaker, maybe you have already seen in the program. And what I'm going to do now is to introduce our first guest speaker. She will be joining us online, Irina Shelenkova. Hi, Irina.
Good morning, dear colleagues, dear students. So I'm happy to see you during this online and face-to-face conference, but I'm joining the conference online. And let me share my screen with you to start my presentation. Okay. So I hope you can see it perfectly well. And let me start. First of all, I would like to introduce myself once again. My name is Irina Shelenkova, and I'm a representative of Istanbul Medipol University, Turkey. Today I'm going to talk about orientation program for international students and how to turn challenges into success. Our university is an international university. Nowadays, we have more than 3,000 international students from 84 countries worldwide. So it is absolutely clear when new students come, they have very scarce knowledge. I mean, foreign students, of course, they have very scarce knowledge about how to just perform during academic life. They know very little about Turkish history, culture, and they know absolutely nothing about life on campus. So it means they face a lot of challenges. And our task is to turn these challenges into their opportunities and into their success. So we decided to organize an orientation program for international students. The title of this program is Making the Most of International Study Opportunities. It includes 36 hours of academic hours of interactive lectures. Originally, we developed this orientation program as a face-to-face program, but due to pandemic situation, we had to change the program and we conducted it online. Nevertheless, we tried our best to make it interactive. What topics are included into it? The first one is studying abroad, where we teach students how to take notes during the lectures, how to give presentations, and so on. The second important topic is system of education in Turkey. The third one is university structure. The fourth, from culture shock to cultural awareness. And the fifth one is supposed to be kind of youth festival where students represent their country, its culture, and its traditions. In brief, what each topic includes. As for studying abroad, it consists of 10 academic hours, and here students find out their individual learning styles. They are taught how to take lecture notes, give short presentations, and in general, they are given recommendations how to study effectively. The second topic is the system of education in Turkey. It is a short topic in comparison with others. It includes only 4 academic hours. Here we tell the students about general education in Turkey, the levels of higher education according to the Bologna Declaration, types of higher education institutions, and we also share with them academic exchange programs with the possibilities to participate in them. They include Erasmus+, Mevlana, and Farabi. And we also discuss with them the language of instruction. In Medipol, there are 2 possibilities to choose courses delivered in Turkish and delivered in English, the same ones. And of course, our international students choose English as their language of instruction. The third topic is about university structure. We tell students about Turkish university structure in general and about Medipol University structure in particular. To be exact, we share with them how to live on campus and how to make it successfully, what to do in the dormitories, how to get medical help, how to get the access to libraries, what to eat and where, and many other things. So one more important point is how to do something, especially how to get a reduced fare transportation card, how to get the same reduced fare museum card, how to buy and register your home, and so on. Of course, these things can seem very easy, but believe me, for foreigners who have just arrived to the country, these points are a great challenge, and we try to make their life easy here, giving these very practical pieces of advice. And the fourth unit the fourth model is the longest one. It has 12 academic hours. Here we talk about culture shock. Students evaluate their level of culture shock, and we give them recommendations how to avoid it accordingly to their symptoms and their level, and how to deal with it. We talk about cultural awareness and its levels. We discuss briefly the history of Turkey, its geographical position, famous people, landmarks, and many other things, including what to do and not to do being in Turkey, and stereotypes about Turkey, which of them are true ones and which of them are not. And the last actually unit, which is the most interesting one, the most picturesque, I should say, but we decided to skip it this year and last year as well due to this pandemic situation, because we want to organize it as a festival of countries and cultures. Students can be divided into small groups according to their country, and they are given this task in the beginning of the course, and the course finishes with the students' presentations on their traditions and cultures, including dances, arts, and cuisines, and so on. Okay, so this is just the content. The most important thing is how we manage to make this course interactive. As for students are provided with PowerPoint presentations, videos, and different workbook tasks. As for the lecturers, their study materials are the same, but they also include lecture materials with notes, different recommendations, and answer keys to workbook tasks and exercises. And of course, it is better once to see than 100 times to hear. That is why I show you the examples of the exercises that are included into the workbook. For example, when we discuss the university structure, students can be divided into groups, and they can develop their ideal university rules and regulations. They also discuss the menu for their students' canteen, including the best and the favorite Turkish national traditional dishes. One more activity from the workbook is when students try to assess their level of their culture shock, answering the questions here. And one more example, this is lecture 4, Turkey, about traditions and values. This is a typical, I should say, a matching exercise, but students match the rubrics given here with the traditions and values described. Now, this is a teacher's notebook. Teacher's notes. Here, as you can see, not only notes are included and answer keys, but also the recommendations for teachers, how they can start their lecture, including different questions to discuss, important and useful links, where they can find videos and other useful resources. Okay, so here you can see the platform which we have chosen for our online orientation program. And this slide shows that our orientation program doesn't end with the end of the lesson. After the lesson, we share all the materials used in the lesson. We give the tasks, and also we share useful, for example, links like maps of Istanbul, transportation apps, and medical shuttle timetables. Here, students have the possibility to ask different questions, and of course, we answer them. Here, you can see that for the process of education, for teaching and study, appraisal is very important point, a very important motivational point. And appraisal was given to all the students for the participation. And the most active students were given personal appraisal, as you can see here. All their names are mentioned. Thank you note is given to them, and this is one of their idea about the course. So you have been so helpful. Thank you very much for the time and effort you put. So of course it is, when we get these messages from our students, international students, of course this is very motivating. Here, actually, you can see the number of students who participated in the program. Last academic year, the number was 229. This academic year, it was 311 students. Actually, the participation is voluntary. This is not a must to participate in this program. That is why we can see that our orientation program is popular, and we hope to see more students during the next academic year. And here we try to calculate if our program is really interactive. And here we can see the activities our students participated in. These were study surveys, questionnaires, quizzes, workbook assignments, and so on. And we even calculated the number of replies we got from the students during one lesson. Here you can see the highest number, 327 replies from 46 students. Of course, the numbers can be different, but there were no lessons without interaction, students' involvement, and their replies to the tasks. And we are very happy about it. But it was not enough. For us, we decided to organize the survey where we asked 12 questions, and students tried to assess the lecturers' performance during the orientation program, the development of their own skills and knowledge, and their topics we offered during this program. And as you can see, the results are very good, I should say. As for instructors' performance, it was evaluated very, I should say, it received very high evaluation. Here, as for students' knowledge and skills, they evaluated themselves also accordingly. Here you can see 50% as strongly agree that online interaction was provided during their course, and here that they strongly agree, almost 60%, that orientation program increased their knowledge and developed their skills. And as for topics, here you can see their example. Actually, we decided to skip one of the topics, or probably enrich and enlarge the most interesting ones. But the students' answers showed that all the topics are interesting and successful. So we decided to use all of them next academic year and probably update them accordingly with new facts and figures. So after all this research, we have made a conclusion, actually, that our course, our orientation program was very successful, and it really helped students to turn their challenges into success and into a lot of opportunities. So we are going to continue this orientation program next academic year as well and make it even better. And we also hope that we can make it not online, but face-to-face, including all the tours, excursions, and all the events that we have already planned. Okay, dear colleagues and students, thank you very much for your attendance, for your participation. And this is the end of my presentation, and you are welcome with your questions, if you have any.
So thank you very much for your presentation. And actually, we are not surprised because we all remember you as a very passionate teacher. And I also wanted to say a few words about Irina because this room is filled with our postgraduate students mainly. And maybe you've been using the textbook English for Academics. And Irina is one of the co-authors of this textbook because I personally use it with my master's students, and maybe you also have been using it, and we all know how motivated and passionate you are, and we think that your students are really lucky to have such a great teacher. And as I've seen from the diagrams, the feedback that you get from students is quite positive. But surprisingly, they focused on the importance of taking notes for lectures. Does it mean that they lack academic skills? They struggle with it?
Actually, these are newcomers, and they come from all over the world, as you can understand, 84 countries. And to make their life easier, we want to teach them essential academic skills. Yes, as practice shows, they do not know how to take lecture notes, how to give presentations, what the essential rules are. So this information is very important, and we are very happy that we managed to give them this opportunity to start their academic year with some basic knowledge and skills.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions to our guest speaker? So if no, let me introduce our next speaker, and this is actually the teacher from our department, PhD in linguistics, assistant professor of our department, Екатерина Валерьевна Дворецкая, and she will be talking about the language of the new reality, and this is the English of the time of coronavirus, and this topic is actually very important for our department in general because we all worked on a joint monograph, and in her talk she will be probably sharing some of the findings. Take the floor.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here today and introduce my speech, which is devoted to part of the work that we, together with the colleagues from the Department of Foreign Languages and International Communication, did last year on the new changes, on the new language that has emerged during the time of the coronavirus. Because, as you know, language is a living organism, and as the reality changes around us, so does the language. So, of course, the year 2020 has presented lots of challenges to us. I'm referring to the ongoing pandemic of the coronavirus. And language was quick to respond to these challenges by creating new ways to express this environment. So English is one of the most probably responsive and fluid languages. So it did so by using, first of all, creating lots of new words to reflect on the changes around us, but also by resurrecting some of the vocabulary that has been falling out of use, and also by repurposing the existing words and phrases to reflect the new environment. I would like to start with, first of all, referring to the old words that were falling out of use but were, as I said, resurrected. One of the examples of these words is actually the word itself, coronavirus. Just raise your hands, please. How many people here have used the word coronavirus before 2020? Well, no one? Probably, well, me neither. Well, we knew the word virus, and that was enough for us. But the word itself existed in the English language and in some other languages, because that's a scientific term, since 1960s, when the family of these viruses was first discovered. But the research shows that only in 2020 it has become, obviously, a well-known, a household term. So if you look at these diagram representing the use of, first of all, coronavirus, then the terms that stemmed from it, COVID and COVID-19, you can see how the usage of these words spiked in 2020. Well, quarantine, another example of a word that was previously almost falling out of use. We might be tricked as Russian speakers by this idea, because you see, in Russian, the Russian word "карантин" was actually quite alive, but not in English. You see, the word in English itself existed since the 15th century. It is of Venetian origin. You might know that it comes from the Italian and Venetian word quaranta, meaning 40, and the original meaning with which it was used in English was, interestingly, desert in which Christ fasted for 40 days. Something completely different. Later, it was used to refer to a period of 40 days in which a widow has the right to remain in her dead husband's house. Another quite interesting is, but in the modern sense of a period of time when a person is isolated, for some reason, quarantine, it became used in English only since 1670s. Quite an old word. But if you look at the statistics of, for example, Google, the amount of documents and web pages with the word quarantine altogether is up to 300 million. But so 265 million of documents with this word. But have a look. Half of those documents refer to 2020. So again, we see an immense change in the frequency of usage of this word during the times of the pandemic. Well, one more change that was noted in the English language, and again, which referred to a more active use of the words previously used not so frequently, it is the wartime metaphors. On this slide, you can see headlines from some of the British newspapers in 2020, where medical workers were referred to as an army fighting on the front line. So all the words that evoke the times of war. Thanks God, there was a long period of time when such metaphors were not needed in the English language. But this the comparison of the pandemic with the times of war has made it necessary to use them. However, linguists warn against the use of such metaphors too much, because you know, For example, at the beginning of the pandemic, it was a worldwide situation when medical workers, those heroes, often lacked, for example, protective equipment, or were treated not as they deserved, and that brought about, so this evoked in some of them the feelings that they were reduced from heroes to zeros. But wartime metaphors in general was a characteristic feature of the coronavirus speak. Well, another feature of the new changing language was the repurposing of the existing vocabulary. So lots of words that existed in English that were widely used developed new meanings. For example, here you can see some examples from online sources, from printed materials, where these words that already existed in English are used in new senses, in new meanings. Have a look at the word shielding, for example. It comes from shield, a piece of protective armor, for warriors. And previously, it was already repurposed to be used in football, to refer to football. Shielding in football is a practice when one player puts their body between, for example, a player of the opposing team and the ball, so that not let them score the goal. So that was one new meaning of shielding. But during the pandemic, shielding became became used in a completely new way. So it is when you're shielding, you are staying away from. Okay, let me even read it. So a shielding is a method of protecting yourself from a disease that involves staying away, staying at home, and having as little contact with other people as possible. In Russian, in most cases, we used the word изоляция for this case. Isolation was also used in English, but shielding was more characteristic, especially of British English. The expression flatten the curve, that's also quite an interesting way. Curve, кривая, we use this word a lot when we look at the diagrams or the graphs where several sets of data are compared. But during the pandemic, when we spoke about the curve and still are speaking about it, we mostly mean the data on the number of people infected with the virus. And to flatten the curve, to make this number lower, is a specific method, a specific behavior when you try to lower the number of infections by different methods and put less pressure on the medical facilities, on the healthcare system. So you see a completely different meaning of the expressions of two words that exist in English and that are used in other contexts. Well, the word lockdown, of course, it was even chosen the word of the year by the Collins Dictionary of English. And lockdown existed in English since the 19th century. It was first documented in English dictionaries in the 19th century. It was an occasion or time when access to a place is restricted because of some danger. But again, if we look at the statistics of this word usage in 2020, the specific danger that it referred to was coronavirus. And so nowadays, even in Russian, it was borrowed as a sort of a borrowed word, lockdown. Yeah, we use it. We immediately understand that we're speaking about this period of quarantine when everyone had to stay at homes. So in this meaning, this word was even included in the new version of the Cambridge Dictionary of English, as a new shade of the word lockdown. Okay. Well, but of course, the most interesting feature of the new coronavirus speak are the neologisms. You probably have heard about many of such neologisms, especially with the stem coronavirus or COVID. Some of these words originated in English but then became international words. We all have heard about covidiot, or maybe, for example, Coronagedon. It's interesting that many of these words are created by the method of blending. Blending when two words are put together, to create a new one. So some of the words were very creative, actually. You see, for example, covidivores. So when some couples who stayed during the lockdown together too long, were brought to the edge of divorce. And so these divorces became known as covidivores. Well, corona babies, quarantines, you can guess the meanings of these words, I think, from the two stems that they it's interesting how geographic variation is expressed in this coronavirus language. For example, in Australian English, it's very common to shorten words. Australian English is famous for this. And coronavirus became shortened to Rona. And from this shortened stem, new creations were made. For example, Happy Roniversary. That was a popular slogan across the social media, across the internet, on the verge of the sad anniversary of first lockdowns. You see, so that's the anniversary of coronavirus lockdown, just shortened to Roniversary. As we said, blending is the #1 method of creating new words. If you look at this slide, you see some examples from printed sources, from online usage of words that were created by it. And can you guess the meanings of some of these words? Maybe you know them. What's infodemic? Which words it comes from? Information pandemic. But again, the new meaning, so we understand a bit information, we understand pandemic, but altogether they create a new meaning of the word. So that's an overflow of information, almost false information about the pandemic. So you see, other words, for example, this Zoom bombing, it comes from the name of the now famous video conferencing service Zoom, and that refers to practice of tricking people or even pranking people when interrupting their Zoom meetings and so on. So in our book on the discourse at the times of coronavirus, we give lots of examples of these new creations and discuss them in detail. Okay, some of the collocations that also became known. So these are not neologisms, but new collocations of the words. If you look at these pictures, can you guess which are those collocations? For example, in the first picture with the two ladies sitting together, what does it illustrate? Social distancing, yeah. So, for example, when the picture with the Angela Merkel, so it demonstrates the new way of greeting each other, elbow bump. Yeah, so the two words existed in English, but this when they're put together in this way, they create a completely new phenomenon. Yeah. The picture on the right demonstrates a digital nomad, a person who can work digitally, who can work online, being wherever in the world. A nomad, странник, кочевник. And the picture below it, that's the word, the collocation working from home. Again, not a new word absolutely, and not even a new collocation, but it's interesting that it became shortened in the time of the coronavirus and was often used as an acronym, WFH. So that's why it's sort of a new collocation, new acronym, sorry. Okay. Also, the frequency of some collocations was noted, changes in the frequency of how words collocated. Again, if you look, for example, at the statistics for the word Zoom for the times before the pandemic, you see it mostly collocated with optical devices, lens, something connected with photography, camera work. But since 2020, when you say Zoom, probably the first thing people start thinking about is video conferencing and completing new collocations. Okay, well, and to conclude my speak today, of course, the topic is huge and neologisms are abundant, so that's why specifically because of this great number of changes that English experienced, the Oxford Report on the Languages called it an unprecedented year. Well, so I think we will continue to study these changes, to record them, and try to analyze them. Thank you very much for your attention. Questions? No questions.
Thank you very much, Екатерина Valerievna. It was interesting as usual. Okay, and now let me introduce our next speaker. And this is the Dean of the Faculty for Natural Sciences and Humanities, Konstantin Vladimirovich Samokhin. He has a special interest in history, and probably you all know him because he teaches quite a range of courses at our university, ranging from philosophy to methodology of scientific research. And you are welcome.
I have been studying the modernization problems since the beginning of the 20th of the current century. And thank you for the opportunity to present of my 20-year work. The name of my report is The Role of Methodology in Scientific Investigations, the case of modernization theory for the Russian history. So, by the moment of historical science has stopped to consider as a totality of events that follow each other in definite chronological order. This view on history has successfully and fruitfully overcome through necessity of development of historical investigations, conceptual and methodological basis. The explanatory function of history plays a great role in this aspect. It may take two levels. First of them, the theoretical one, the general concept of the history of the countries, group, or the whole world has the great significance. And the second of them, the empiric one, the previous level narrows until the history of one country or its different aspects. There are many discussions about the modernization theory according to the content of these two levels. The conditions under which modernization theory appeared and its factors of development give reasons to doubt its scientific validity. It was developed in 1950s, 1960s, at the time when the world was divided into two parts during the Cold War. Leading states involved into the division tried to extend their power through various ideological tools. At that moment, modernization was interpreted as a strategy for the third world countries, the realization of which was based on their only example and the development result. The Western civilization, I mean in this case, as an orienting point. But the strategy never succeeded in above-mentioned countries and resulted in strong criticism of this ideological construct in 1970s. The revival of modernization theory was in 1980s, 1990s, when its essential points were changed. Modernization was not interpreted as the transition from the traditional or agrarian society to the modern or industrial one, but as a number of different ways of development, among which the West was one of feasible alternatives. This did not fulfill its ideological political commitment and gave a new impulse for the realization of the theory, thus helping to consider modernization as a theoretical construct with all consequences. Russian scientists in humanities made the same conclusion in the 1980s, 1990s, when modernization was commonly discussed. These processes was caused by a new historical paradigm which made Russian research change a formation approach. Moreover, a new development strategy of the Russian Federation was elaborated at the beginning of the 21st century. So in this case, we can also notice ideological factors that proved the increasing popularity of modernization theory, given that the transition concept itself needed a theoretical grounding at that moment as never before. Thus, modernization theory was relevant for the Russian academic paradigm, but later its popularity decreased and it was strongly criticized in the Russian humanities. Such an approach to modernization theory was explained by the fact that it had gone out of date and was considered to be artificial, what did not allow to realize it in practice. However, every historian must follow the principle of objectiveness in his studies first and foremost. So in this case, I must agree with Valentina Fedotova, the famous scientist in philosophy and researcher of modernization theory, who defended modernization theory in the following way. Admitting that classical modernization theory, like any other classical theory, comes across such circumstances during its development, which it can't explain or foresee, and therefore turn into facts within its theoretical framework. We will object to the opposing arguments, which have three drawbacks, in our opinion: ontologization of theoretical constructs, unhistoricalness, and presentism as a part of the latter. The matter is that modernization theory is a theory, but not ideology or paradigm or research program closely connected with extra-scientific knowledge. It is not clear for non-specialists, and it is based on ideal types according to Max Weber theory, or theoretical constructs as they are called by modern methodologists. Taking into consideration this point of view, it should be noted that at the modern stage of historical studies, popularity of modernization has really decreased, but that allows to develop a more objective approach to the theory, which will not be affected by any ideology. It is possible to outline ways of developing and using this discourse in specific historical studies through the thorough consideration of the discourse basics. As it was mentioned above, modernization theory is interpreted in two ways. First of them, a classical interpretation states that modernization is the transition from the traditional or agrarian society to the modern or industrial one, I have said. This approach is called a linear one. And the second approach, a modern interpretation, states that modernization is a way of development peculiar for many contemporary countries, among which the Western civilization is considered to be one of feasible models for them, which also faces great changes at the present moment. This approach is known as a multilinear one. I believe that the classical interpretation of modernization theory is more useful for historical studies covering the period before the beginning of the 20th century, when the West had all the features typical for the industrial society. As for the modern interpretation, it must be used for the explanation of different processes related to the period beginning with the 20th century. The further consideration prove that the First World War outlined the crisis of the Western civilization that resulted in the decrease of opportunities for the industrial society development and accelerated the formation of a post-industrial society. I believe that modernization process in the Russian state began in the first quarter of the 18th century because the society had all the typical features of the traditional society in the previous century. And the wars of Russian Empire with Western civilization's countries played the great role for the Russian modernization. The Great Northern War was actually a local conflict which resulted in one of the greatest victories in the history of the Russian state. Therefore, it could not have a serious impact on the processes of Russian modernization. In fact, only high society was modernized. As for other classes of the Russian society, modernization did not influence them at all, or it was a partial impact. The Napoleonic Wars in general and the Patriotic War of 1812 in particular had to lead to some rise of modernization processes. There was some rise of modernization efforts under the influence of the Napoleonic Wars, but it was not large due to the positive result of the Patriotic War of 1812 and the foreign campaign of 1813-1814 as far as Russia was concerned. The situation significantly changed in the middle of the 19th century when the Russian Empire suffered a serious defeat in the regional conflict which was known as the Crimean War. Social modernization associated firstly with the abolition of serfdom prevailed in Russia. They resulted in the further active economic development and the initial stage of spiritual transformation in the peasantry mentality. However, political changes at the time were slowed down by the reforms of Alexander III. The next wave of modernization in Russia was encouraged by the Russo-Japanese War. As it is known, the defeat in the war with Japan was one of the causes of the First Russian Revolution, which resulted in political modernization, and the Russian Empire transformed into a dual monarchy. Partial modernization was explained by the fact that military acts were local. The First World War gave the greatest impulse to Russian modernization. Even the name of this conflict reflects its geographical scale, and conditions of the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk can be regarded as a defeat of Russia. Bolsheviks' efforts to establish an ideocratic state were of a true mobilization type. A practically 70-year wave of modernization process began in the Russian state. Industrialization was carried out, social mobility and process of urbanization reached a high level. However, social mobility was mostly inductive due to general political and ideological directives typical for the USSR. The kleptocratic political system itself and Marxist ideologies of different types did not coincide with the industrial or modern society model. That is why Soviet modernization can be considered to be divergent. Thank you for your great attention.
So, thank you very much. Now, let me introduce our next speaker, an international participant who will be joining us from Karaganda, Kazakhstan. And this is Anna Palina. Anna, let me say a few words about the connection between our university and Buketov Karaganda University. So actually we signed a cooperation agreement almost 7 or 8 years ago and participated in a number of joint projects and Anna holds a master's degree in pedagogy, and she will be talking about the professional identity of future teachers. Do you hear me? Sorry, we don't
Yes,
hear
I can hear you. So, good day, everyone. Thank you for such a possibility to participate in your conference. I'm very glad. And this is very exciting for me. So today I'm glad to present you an information about professional identity of future teachers. Let me share the presentation. So, professional identity of future teachers. This is the topic, this is the theme of my PhD research. I'm second-year PhD student, and my scientific supervisors are Klujanova Gulnaz Kashkimbaevna, candidate of pedagogical sciences, professor in Karaganda Buketov University, and Tatiana Valerievna Mordovina, candidate of pedagogical sciences, associate professor in Tambov State Technical University. So the growing demands of society and state for the quality of teachers' professional training require a revision of the content of pedagogical competencies, which should include teachers' conscious identification with this profession and feeling as a professional. In other words, university studies should lead students to attaining their professional identity. What is professional identity? Ludmila Schneider considers...
your slides. We don't see your slides. We see the last one.
Really? I don't know why. Once again.
We saw the last one. Thank you. This one.
Sorry, once again. Can you see? So you can see the slides, yeah?
We'll see your slides. Yes, everything is fine.
Okay, thank you. So Ludmila Schneider considers professional identity as a complex, integrative psychological phenomenon, a leading characteristics characteristic of a person's professional development, which indicates the degree of acceptance of the chosen profession as a means of self-realization and development, awareness of his identity with this group, and assessment of the importance of membership in it. It is also an aspect of personal and social identity, awareness and acceptance of himself as a representative of this profession with appropriate professional competencies. So identity is realized through two opposing but complementary mechanisms, identification and alienation. Within the norm, the processes of identification and alienation occur simultaneously and concurrently and generate a stable identity. Professional identification is an objective and subjective unity with professional group and occupation that determines the continuity of persons' professional characteristics, norms, roles, and statuses. And professional alienation is the opposite process associated with objective and subjective rejection of this unity and destruction of individuals' professional characteristics. Disbalance between these two processes, identification and alienation, triggers crisis. It can be expressed in predominance of identification processes, predominance of alienation processes, merging, and even loss of identity. The identity problem is solved by answering the complementary questions. Who am I and which group do I belong to? Finding the answers to these questions realizes the basic human need for self-determination and recognition. This need is represented at the top of the famous hierarchy of needs by Maslow. Identity is a current state, an experience of the integrity of one's self, and can be revised in crisis situations when identity elements are added or changed. Identity, in the view of Waterman, has the following elements: goals, values, and beliefs. Identity is the interconnection of both the content of these elements and the process of their identification, assessment, and selection. James differentiated the concept of self into the subjective side, namely cognizing self, and the objective side, which is a cognizable self or mine. Maley, following James, also separates the concept of self and mine. And according to Mead, identity is not formed by the cognizing self, and in order for a person to become an object of his own cognition, the act of reflection is required. Achieving identity is possible only through social interaction, and a very important role here is played by the generalized other, a person we align ourselves with and can evaluate our action with his help, as if viewing from the side. Mead singled out a conscious and unconscious identity, and for the possibility of attaining conscious identity is exercised only by making use of reflection skills. Here you can see some types or statuses of identity. Erickson identified 3 types of identity, but most importantly nowadays, the statuses that are developed by James Marcia. There are 4 statuses: identity diffusion, identity foreclosure, moratorium, identity achievement. And Ludmila Schneider adds one more status: pseudo-identity. Fogelson presented identity in the form of a model, including 4 types of identities that exist in a person simultaneously and fight one another. They are ideal identity, real, negative, and presented identity. Any person seeks to reduce the gap between the real and ideal identities, and to maximize the distance between the real and negative identities. For this aim, he uses the presented identity in the process of social interaction. Krapman considers the following human abilities to be a necessary condition for maintaining identity in situations of social interaction: ability to distancing, ability to empathy, tolerance to contradictions, and successful presentation of one's identity. Thus, we conceive that the process of forming students' professional identity should include the following mandatory components: development of reflection skills and the accumulation of theoretical knowledge about the features of achieving and maintaining professional identity in order to activate the process of self-knowledge, transformation of unconscious identity into a conscious one, regulation of identification and alienation mechanisms to prevent the process of slowing down the formation or even losing identity. Formulation of a set of personally and professionally significant goals, values, and beliefs that provide a sense of direction and meaningfulness of students' own professional life. And the last, formation of students' adequate professional image of self and mind through the awareness of their four struggling identities: real, ideal, negative, and presented, and the approximation of the real identity to the ideal one. This will contribute to the awareness of their own competence, self-efficacy in solving professional problems, a more complete understanding of abilities, and the definition of long-run objectives of self-development in teaching profession. So here you can see some practical tasks we have prepared for you for a better understanding of professional identity, for development of self-reflection skills. And these tasks you may do in your free time after the conference. Just you may take some photo or screenshot. And I'm not going to read the tasks due to the lack of time, but they are really interesting. They will allow you to realize what are your feelings about your identity. And the second task is you should answer these 4 questions, especially when you have some goal, professional goal that you hesitate to start. And concluding, so all said above, we are convinced that the professional identity is the obligatory component of teachers' professionalism, and therefore the development of this phenomenon should be paid special attention within the university training, alongside the formation of other compulsory professional competencies. So thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, you are very welcome to ask.
Have you got any questions? So who do your students identify themselves with?
I have already talked about this question to the students. Of course, they are still students in their minds. They are not professionals. That is why this identity is not yet formed. And the real professional identity, which has the status of achievement, comes to a person with experience, professional experience. Only when a person can get some information from his own experience, he can feel himself a professional. But when teaching students, we need to get them prepared for this process.
Yeah, definitely. It's really important to raise their awareness of their future job. But anyway, any hands-on experience cannot be replaced by anything. So thank you very much. And now I would like to introduce our last speaker, and this is the associate professor from our department, PhD in linguistics, Елена Юрьевна Воякина, and she will be talking about metaphorical modeling of the coronavirus pandemic reality.
Well, hello everyone. I'd like to continue the topic covered by Екатерина Валерьевна Дворецкая and to talk about metaphorical modeling of the coronavirus pandemic reality. So, being a global social phenomenon and affecting all aspects of human life, the coronavirus pandemic has enriched vocabulary in many languages, and it illustrates how a person can adapt to the changing reality at everyday and global levels. Well, actually, the linguistic situation during the coronavirus pandemic is a rare case in the history of the language, as, well, when a huge number of words have appeared, a lot of word formation models have activated, existing words have changed their meanings, and so on. And trying to convey these changes in our reality, journalists, public speakers, politicians resort to also to figurative means of the language that vividly and concisely describe the changes and the reactions of the population to these changes. So, and one of the most popular means of attracting people's attention is metaphor. So, just a second. Well, so here you can see the most frequent words of the pandemic linguistic situation. So it's a kind of a word cloud. And well, talking about the process of metaphorization, we can see that the role of metaphor is not only to increase the expressiveness of the statement, but also to construct the reality, to conceptualize the most important elements, the most important concepts. And the process of metaphorization is a kind of a mirror when concepts from the target domain are described, are explained by means of the source domain, and their assessment is given. So it's a kind of metaphorical mapping or cognitive mapping, as metaphor fulfills the cognitive function. Well, metaphorical models are characterized by frequency, productivity, and dominance in a certain historical period. And we analyzed the most productive metaphorical models characteristic of the pandemic period in modern Russian and Anglo-American media discourse. And it allowed us to reflect the mood of the society in a particular period of time. And the material of the study was included the interviews, blogs, articles, notes covered by this pandemic topic. So let's see the most productive metaphorical models. So Екатерина Валерьевна has already talked about it. So the most widespread model here is COVID-19 is war. And you can see lots of, well, examples like battle plan, outbreak, doctors fighting on the front lines, invisible enemy. The COVID virus is described as invisible enemy, global weapon, defend, advance, strike, and so on. One of the most striking examples of a military metaphorical model is the topic of vaccination. So you can see the example with Oxford vaccine battle, which proceeds in the next few weeks, will have a crucial bearing on the global battle against the pandemic. Another popular area related to the coronavirus pandemic described through the conceptual area of war is the area of distant technologies. Again, Zoom bombing is quite popular when somebody interrupts into the Zoom conference or any online actually event just to disrupt them or shock the organizers or participants of this event. Another popular model is COVID-19 is a natural disaster. Well, the events are often described, the events of the pandemic period are often described with natural disasters like COVID hurricane, corona disaster, corona tornado, storm, corona quake, epicenter of infection, and so on. We can find such examples as corona wave second, first, third, autumn, winter, spring corona waves, and, well, lots of the examples can be found. Also such toponyms as where some catastrophes happened in the past, like Chernobyl, also become as sources of metaphorization here. Well, the next model is COVID-19 is an element of mythology or religion. Well, the topic of myths, themes of myths, is as an integral element of entire world culture and civilization is a frequent source of comparison in media discourse, and it includes different mythological, religious, fairy tale characters that are part of the main vocabulary of almost any language and are considered as universal concepts of the world culture. So we can see here such metaphors as apocalypse, Coronageddon, demon, Damocles sword, Rubicon, Bedlam, well, organ stables, Gordian knot, well, and many, many others. So you can see the picture with the name of this period. So these metaphorical images are based on archetypal images and are stable in time and space. That's why they are often used to describe this period, just to reflect people's emotions like fear, panic, or something in the texts or statements. Well, the next metaphorical model is COVID-19 is a human. Well, such metaphors, so the media often describes the COVID-19 virus who is running somewhere, catches up with humanity, eats, grams people's lungs, rests in the summer, moves to some regions and sometimes. Here we can also see that such feelings and people's states can be also used as sources of comparison, like hunger, anxiety, fear, panic, stress, hysteria, and so on. So this metaphorical model can also include the use of proper names as a nomination of the virus itself. So the coronavirus is called as Miss Rona, Lady Rona, Aunt Rona, and so on. For example, Miss Rona will not lay a finger on me because I will stay at home. Well, another model is COVID-19 is sports or game. So the field of sports and gaming is becomes quite a widespread source of metaphorization. So during the period of lockdowns and quarantines, different corona tournaments, Zoom trainings, antivirus exercises were held in various countries. And it's also reflects the vaccination topic. For example, the great vaccine race, when lots of pharmaceutical companies competed who will be the first in this race and who will make the best vaccine. Well, another model is COVID-19 is travel. We can see such metaphors as corona traveling, vax tours about vaccine tourism, when people went to some countries or some regions to get a vaccine, quarantine cruise, and so on. Well, and the last, quite productive, a metaphorical model is COVID-19 is prison. When we were talking about different lockdowns, self-isolation, we can find such metaphors as home self-arrest regime, concentration camp, Corona prison, digital surveillance, fugitive criminals. It's about people who don't wear masks, Corona regime, and so on, which is tightened. Well, as for the quantitative ratio of sources, well, in Russian and Anglo-American media discourse, we just tried to make a kind of a diagram. War, natural, mythology, and human sources are almost the same in Russian and Anglo-American media discourse. You can see that the war is the most productive model. And, well, sports gaming and prison, they have some national preferences. Maybe it's because of our mentality. In Russia, for example, people has already experienced this kind of imprisonment, like lockdowns during the Soviet period, and maybe it's, that's why this metaphor is more popular, for example, than in Anglo-American media discourse. So in general, linguistic trends turned out to be common for the whole world. And this also shows the uniqueness of the situation, and the intensity of the production of coronavirus metaphors in both media discourse, Russian and Anglo-American, is almost the same. So here we can even talk about parallel processes that occur in both languages, since we live in the same reality, and therefore people try to describe it in the same way, react to the events surrounding a person in the same way. So, thank you for attention. Any questions? Thanks.
Okay, Irina, thank you very much, Elena Yurievna. And actually, the plenary session is over. And what are we going to do now? First, we are going to have a short break, a 5-minute break. And as you know, this conference is not only for distinguished researchers, it's also for those who are making their first steps in science. So after the break, we are going to have special interest group sessions, and actually we have 3 of them. So let me guide you where you need to go. So postgraduate students who are going to present in English are going to stay here. Translation studies will be in the room next to this one, and the students who are going to present in German, студенты, которые будут выступать на немецком языке, через одну дверь тоже здесь справа. Энергия называется зал. Okay, let's have a 5-minute break. Thanks for listening. See you soon.